Honestly, this is a very premium soundbar. I've been using this one for a little over a month now, and I've had numerous soundbars in this particular room connected to the TV to really try and compare and contrast what's different about all these soundbars that we do have. And the Arc does not have a separate subwoofer come standard. You do need to buy that separately. But what's interesting is that the Arc on its own actually has enough punch to stand on its own without having a separate subwoofer. So when you do think about all the components in your living room, the TV and the Arc is really all you actually need to get a good visual and sound experience now. So they've kind of changed the game in what you expect from a home theater.
All right, on the show, let's talk about Sonos. A couple of weeks ago, we spoke to Sonos. They came on. We did an interview with them about the new Arc. Geoff Quattromani, friend of the show, is joining us today to talk about Arc as well as a whole bunch of other things. But before we get to Geoff, let's take a look at what Sonos told us a couple of weeks ago about their dual app strategy for Sonos products.
Arc and also the new Sub and the new 5 that we announced at the same time as Arc, they all run exclusively on this new Sonos S2 app and software. And all of our other modern products will work on that software too. Now, those very oldest legacy products that you mentioned, those products will continue to work on our current software, which will be renamed S1. And so customers who have older products, they will be able to continue to use the software in S1 through the future.
Geoff Quattromani, welcome. How long should Sonos be supporting their speakers for?
Look, I think it's an interesting question. If you look at warranty, you're usually around the 1 to 2 year mark. And then if you think about software updates and you compare it to somebody like Apple, where they're supporting their phones for around the 4 to 5 year mark, potentially in terms of updates. So when it comes to speakers and hardware, yes, you're making a big investment and they'll continue to work in a Sonos ecosystem, but how long should Sonos actually be providing updates to those speakers? I think they've been very generous in the way they've been doing it already. The Play Bar, for example, a 7-year-old product, still supported by Sonos. So it's an investment that people make, and you can see why based on their software strategy.
There seems to be a bit of anger around this dual app strategy that Sonos is going with at the moment, and I wonder, will Apple, will Samsung, will Google, will they all have 10-year support plans and longer for their speakers? I mean, HomePod, for example. If we don't see that supported as long as Sonos has, will there be the same level of anger?
That's an interesting question, and it's funny that I think Sonos buyers tend to be such passionate audiophiles that they almost do have this higher level of expectation than we would have from Apple, because I think Apple probably set a good precedent in replacing their products every 1 to 2 years, whereas in this scenario where we're talking about soundbars, the Arc is replacing the Play Bar, which again is 7 years old. So you are talking about more of an investment in hardware and hopefully the software to follow. Whereas with Apple, we know they're going to release a new iPhone every year. So maybe that as a result does lower expectations around how long they should support it for. So I think it is a little bit of almost having products that are of such a high quality that it almost bites them in the back come later on.
Well, let's look at the Arc. I mean, look, it's a sensational soundbar. You've been reviewing it compared to, and we don't need to name names, but compared to the market, where does this one sit?
Look, honestly, this is a very premium soundbar. I've been using this one for a little over a month now, and I've had numerous soundbars in this particular room connected to the TV to really try and compare and contrast what's different about all these soundbars that we do have. And the Arc does not have a separate subwoofer come standard. You do need to buy that separately. But what's interesting is that the Arc on its own actually has enough punch to stand on its own without having a separate subwoofer. So when you do think about all the components in your living room, the TV and the Arc is really all you actually need to get a good visual and sound experience now. So they've kind of changed the game in what you expect from a home theater.
The interesting thing as well I've always found is that if you're living in an apartment block, are you really seriously going to put a subwoofer on your floor and share this experience that you're having in your apartment with basically not just the people below you, but maybe a couple of floors below that? I mean, a soundbar for most of us should be really enough anyway.
Look, and that's a really good point too. And we're seeing other brands do the same thing in their 2020 soundbar range. If you do really need a separate subwoofer, Sonos will have one. They've got the Sonos Sub. It's about $9.99, and I've got one, and I had connected it to the Arc to see how it would play together. To be honest, it's only really required if you've got a very large room. So if you are in an apartment, it's a component that you don't need to worry about investing in.
So one of the things about Sonos is the ability for the soundbar to listen to itself and to sort of to mold to the surroundings, so to speak, to tweak the sound output based on the environment that you're in. Did you do that, and how did you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you do plug this soundbar in, you've got a setup process you need to follow through your smartphone. And it's actually very simple, where you almost walk around your room with your iPhone in your hand, helping the soundbar understand where it's positioned in the room, what the kind of room in that it's in, and also understand where the walls are. Because, this soundbar needs to use the walls and the ceiling to really project and create that 3D audio experience that you expect from a Dolby Atmos type soundbar. So once you do that tuning process, it really does enhance the audio experience. If people skip that step, you're actually really missing out on what the soundbar is actually capable of doing. So it's very simple. I recommend people do it. It's called TruePlay, and it does completely transform the way the soundbar acts in the room that it's in.
A lot of soundbars on the market. You can get them for $99. You can get them all the way up to where the Arc is at almost $1,500. Is it worth the money? And compared to other soundbars on the market, is this the one you would go with, or would you only go with it if you've got the Sonos ecosystem with other speakers, or would you go with it on its own?
It's a great question. I think for a lot of people, this could be the first Sonos product they have, or it could be the fifth Sonos product they have. It tends to be that once you've got one, you'll build on that ecosystem throughout the home. And I do love that how all of those speakers can play together, whether you've got people over, you're having a party and things like that. The question around whether you should buy this one over others, it does come down to sometimes personal preference. However, what I will say is that this soundbar is compatible with any television. You don't have to have a particular brand TV for this one to work. And the other thing as well to note is that this one will be around for a very long time. If you use the Play Bar, which is its predecessor as an example, 7 years on, we're finally seeing it being replaced. So this is more of an investment into a soundbar. The soundbar that you buy today from Sonos will sound different in 5 years' time than the day you bought it. And that's usually because of what we're talking about, these software updates that Sonos does do to bring this extra tuning and tweaking to continue to make this product sound better. So you won't see that from competitors. Generally, they'll have a whole new soundbar range every year. But you're right, you've got that extra higher cost of entry. So you do need to think about whether it is going to fit into your budget, especially if your TV, for example, isn't even worth as much as the soundbar itself. So something to consider.
Sonos, the tech company that's so good, you can say their name backwards, it still sounds the same. Geoff Quattromani, tech expert, friend of the show. Thanks for joining us today to talk about Arc from Sonos.
Thank you, Charlie.